Dick's a blue-collar guy, right? Blue jean wearing, local guy, just a normal person. This is what I enjoy about talks like this. I think it's very much more relatable sometimes than individuals, and there's nothing wrong with it, but that have authored books and different things like that. So, grew up on a farm in west of Middleton, currently lives on his home farm right now. After spending time in the military, he returned home and married his wife, who he's been married for 52 years. Married. Well done. Joanne. Anybody beat that in this room?
Close.
Okay. He's got 2 married daughters and 3 grandchildren. He attended college and received a BBA degree in 1970. He owns and operates a commercial warehouse business, is an owner of a natural gas business in Oklahoma City. He's owned and operated several businesses in his life, and here's the key: his ministry work has included 46 trips to third world countries to multiple organizations, training public school teachers on character education and the Bible, and also 28 years of prison ministry. And I believe that's from outside the walls of the prison, right, Dick? Okay. The American Legion Honor Guard Firing Squad for funerals and special events. He works with Samaritan Spurs and many other organizations. Give a warm welcome, Dick Hinrichs.
Well, thank you, Josh. And you know, Josh and Jacob, and there's a number of other people here that put in a lot of work to put on these programs every month. And there's a lot of things go on behind the scenes. And I think we should give them a round of applause. You know, Josh asked me almost a year ago if I'd speak today. And I said, Josh, at my age, you're taking a big chance. I don't even buy any green bananas anymore. And he said, oh, you'll be okay. God is good. And so here I am. And, you know, I don't have any computerized charts or graphs or any high-tech stuff to show you guys today. But I can lead with power. And I don't say that with pride, but I say it with a lot of humility. How do I lead with power? Well, you see, I got the Holy Spirit living in me. And in order for that to happen, I had to have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And then He gives the Spirit without limit. Actually, He tells us in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you. You see, I tried it my way for the first 40 years, and it didn't work so well. Before I get started, I want to thank every one of you men for giving me the greatest gift, the best gift you could give anyone today. You gave me the gift of your time. And believe me, you could have been anywhere else. You could have used the weather for an excuse or whatever. But you gave me the gift of your time, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that. And I hope when I leave here today that you don't remember me like a secretary and a few others remember their pastor in this little church in Iowa. You see, this little church in Iowa had a furnace problem. So they called the furnace repairman. And he came, and he's in the furnace room with the church maintenance man. And the church secretary is walking by the outside of the room. And she don't hear the whole conversation that took place. All she heard was the furnace repairman say, well, the fire's gone out, but the blower still works. And she said, oh, they're talking about my pastor. So anyway, don't remember me that way. And everything that I have to say today relates to how God shaped me and formed me to follow Him and to lead with His power, not my own. And so I want to start with the fact that it's only by God's grace that I stand here. I grew up, as he mentioned, on a farm west of Middleton, and I got my love and compassion from my mother. I loved my mother, but I got beatings and abuse from my dad. You know, my dad lived to be 76 years old, and never once in 76 years did I ever hear him say he loved me. Not once. Never once did I get a hug from my father. And, but I always talked to my dad because he was my dad. And it made my mother happy to talk to him. But I didn't like my dad. What a shame. What a shame. And gentlemen, if you don't remember anything I tell you today, remember this. Go home and tell your children that you love them and give them a hug. Tell your wife, tell your mom and dad, tell your grandpa and grandma, tell everyone that you love them, because you don't know if you'll be here tomorrow. And you know, children spell love T-I-M-E. They like your money and they like your material things, but they love your time. And I volunteer drive for Ronald McDonald House in Madison, and I see a lot of sick and dying kids. And the number one thing that those parents will relate to me that they wish they'd have done more of is spending time with their children. And so time is so precious. And this thing right here is a real thief in stealing time from the kids. Well, I want to tell you a little bit about how God shaped and formed my life, and then I'm going to move over to missions a little bit. So anyway, I graduated from high school in 1963, so that kind of dates me. And at that time, there was these signs, these posters all over the place. Well, some of you older guys in here might remember that. They were Uncle Sam pointing at you saying, "Uncle Sam wants you." And of course, I was a little naive in those days. And I thought, what does Uncle Sam want me for? So I went to check it out. The next thing you know, I'm being inducted into the Army. Well, I wasn't in the Army over a couple months, and I could figure out what Uncle Sam wanted me for. You see, there was this little conflict going on at the time called the Vietnam War. So off I went to Southeast Asia. And when I got there, I learned to hate the Russians more than ever. Now, when I was growing up, and some of you younger people won't realize this, but when I was growing up in grade school in the 50s, we used to have air raid drills where we'd have to hide underneath our desk because the Russians are coming. And anyway, then I went to Vietnam, and I discovered, of course, that it was the Russians providing the arms to our enemies that were killing my fellow soldiers. And so I want you to remember what I just said. I hated the Russians, because I'm going to come back to that later. Well, I got out of the Army, and the Army had taught me pretty well. Didn't take me long to get into faster horses, younger women, and older whiskey. And I'm sitting one night at Rusty's. How many of you know where Rusty's was in Middleton? I'm sitting at Rusty's one night. I owned a few bar stools in there. And it's about midnight, and I got at least a six-pack in me. I'm looking across the bar, and I see this beautiful young woman on the other side of the bar. And I thought, it's midnight. That woman looks like she needs some help. I better go over and introduce myself. So I did. And of course, that woman turned out to be my present wife of 52 years. But what I didn't realize at the time is that God had introduced me to an angel. I mean an absolute angel. A servant woman. And that woman put up with more crap from me the first 25 years we were married than any woman should have to put up with. But little by little, God started changing me. And my walk with the Lord didn't come like a flash overnight or in an instant. It came in phases, like you turn on a three-way light bulb. See, I'm kind of a slow learner. And so this is when I oh, excuse me a minute. Yeah, it came came in like you turn on a three-way light bulb in phases. So then I got in 1973, my first daughter was born. And in July of 1977, I moved into a new house that me and another guy built, and it was right next to a farm. It was on a farm I bought, and right next to my mother and dad's farm. And in July of 1977, when we moved into that house, right after that, my second daughter was born in September. And then in January of 1978, when it was 10 below zero, that house burned down. And we lost everything except the shirt on our back. And I'd like to spend time telling you the details of that, but I really don't. I'll just tell you a couple things. My wife actually was gone shopping, and I had went and picked up the babysitter because I was going to a American Legion meeting. And I mean, this is just to show you how God's grace works in a man's life, even in disaster. I'm in the back bedroom, I get a phone call, and I'm on the phone, or I would have been gone. And all of a sudden, the babysitter comes back, and she says, "Her kitchen's filling up with smoke." And I said, "That can't be." Drop the phone, start running out there, smoke's already coming down the hallway. I said, "Get the kids, get them out of the house, go to the neighbor." And I, like a fool, ran downstairs. So where's the smoke all coming from? I opened the furnace room, and there the fire is already in the joist, floor joist. And there's nothing I could do to stop it. So I'm fooling around in the house, and I'm filling up with smoke. My lungs are filling up with smoke. And I got upstairs, and I couldn't see the numbers to dial the fire department. And so I felt my way down the wall, and I found a door that I could fall out of. I fell out on that 10 below zero, and I laid there a minute and got my breath. I had to run to the neighbors yet and call the fire department. Well, by the time I got back, the fire department's already coming up the road. Well, they put me in the ambulance, and they gave me some oxygen, and just to shorten this up a little, then my wife came home. And from the highway, she can see our house. And she drove on up our side road, and she drove right between the fire trucks, jumped out of the car, and ran for the front door. She thought we were all in the house. And the fireman caught her before she got to the front door. Brought her back, put her in the ambulance. And then she could see where I was, told her where the kids was. So she went and picked up the kids and took them down to the farmhouse. My mom and dad were in Arizona for the winter, so the farmhouse was empty. And she pulled the dresser drawer out of my mom's dresser, and she laid my little 4-month-old baby in that dresser drawer and covered her all up and laid her on the floor next to the bed. And it was cold in that farmhouse. And I got there sometime around 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't even know what time I fell asleep, but I woke up at 8 o'clock. And the sun is shining in the window. It's shining on that little dresser drawer. And I looked over the edge of the bed, and I seen my little baby with her blue eyes and her red hair just looking up at me, smiling. And I thought, man, I haven't lost anything. I have everything. And that's when the first phase of that light bulb went on. Because, see, material things didn't mean anything anymore. And then in 1980, my mother died of colon cancer. And I loved my mother. Left a big hole in my heart because she always protected me when my dad would beat me. At least she tried. And I'm on my way to the hospital a week before she died. And I'm thinking on my way to the hospital, man, I haven't told my mother I loved her since I left for the Army. I'm just like my dad. And I ran into the hospital. I ran up to the room. And I put my arms underneath my mother. She was nothing but a bag of bones. And I made like I was going to lift her up, and I looked into her dying eyes. And I says, Mom, I love you, and I'm sorry that it took me 20 years to tell you that. And she said, with her humble, beautiful eyes, she said, you didn't have to, son. A mother knows that. So she kind of like comforted me when I should have been comforting her. And that's when the second phase of that light bulb went on. Because, see, I had to get rid of the macho me image in me. I had to get rid of the pride. I had to get rid of all about me and concentrate on other people. And along with that second phase of that light bulb coming on, I got up one morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and went goose hunting up at the Grand Marsh. Didn't tell my wife where I was going. She had no idea where I was. Picked up my buddies, drove up to the Grand Marsh. Geese weren't flying that day. So, went to the tavern. Played cards all day. Drank all day and half the night. I was told that I got home at midnight. But here's the thing. I don't remember anything from 6 o'clock at night on. Not a thing. Where I was, how I drove home, don't remember nothing. And the next morning, my oldest daughter comes into the room, and she's poking me, and I woke up, and she's looking at me. She said, Daddy, I love you. And I looked at her, and I thought, how did I get here? What did I do? And I thought, I seen that beautiful face on my daughter, and I said, this ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. And I quit drinking. That was it. No more drinking. And I wasn't an alcoholic. I drank mostly when I was with my buddies, but that was the end of my drinking days. And so then a man by the name of Lou King, anybody in here remember him? Man by the name Lou King walked into my life. And I don't know how I got to know Lou, but he called me up one day and he says, want to go to a CBMC meeting? I said, what's that? He said, well, that's where some Christian men get together and talk about Christ and have a good time together. And I said, nah, I don't think so, Lou. I said, I go to church on Sunday and I teach Sunday school, and I really got enough religion. I guess not. But Lou's not one to take no for an answer, if you know him. And so he called me up, and a few months later, and he says, want to go to a CBMC meeting? I said, well, I guess I better get this box checked off, because he's not going to quit. So I said, sure, Lou, I'll go. So I went, and I don't remember who the speaker was, and I don't even remember what the subject was. But I remember the last thing that he said to me. He says, you can't know the living word until you know the written word. And man, I got to thinking about that. I went home. And that phrase bounced around in my head for probably a couple months. Wake up in the morning, it was there all day. Couldn't get it out of my head. One day I'm sitting at the table at home eating lunch. I pushed myself back and got up, and I said to my wife, I know I got a Bible in this house somewhere. So I ran downstairs and I dug through some boxes and I found a Bible. And I started reading it. Wow. I thought, man, the world has sold me a rotten bill of goods. What I'm reading in this Bible doesn't match how I'm living and what I'm doing. And the Spirit lit a fire in my soul, and I got hungry for the gospel. And the more I read, the more I fell in love with Jesus. And that's when the third phase of that light bulb went on. Now I'm lit up for Christ instead of being lit up on alcohol and material things. And so then the Lord reminded me, man, you missed a lot of things. Here I was on the church council for 3 years. Taught Sunday school for 12 years. And I didn't have a clue who Jesus Christ was. Why? Because I didn't read the Bible. See, I taught a lot of church doctrine, but I didn't teach any biblical doctrine. What a difference it makes. And then the Lord led me to a verse that would become my verse for my life. Jeremiah chapter 20, verse 9. His word is in my heart like a fire locked up in my bones. I am weary of holding it in. Indeed, I cannot. And that's when the Lord set in motion a plan in my life to get the Bible into as many hands as I could before I died. That's why the 46 trips. That's why there's a case of Bibles sitting right here. And if any one of you in here need a Bible, or you know someone else that needs a Bible, you help yourself, no charge. And there's some calling cards of mine laying there too, right here. And if you have any questions, you don't know where to start or anything else, you call me, and I'll help you. And so then when I started reading the Bible, it changed my whole life. It changed everything in me. It changed how I talked to my wife, how I treated my kids, what I do for a living, who I hung around with. Changed everything in my life. Amazing what happened. But then the Lord reminded me, it's not easy following me with your new life. You're going to have a target on your back. You're going to have a big target on your back. And you're going to be persecuted. You're going to be challenged. And I am constantly being thrown under the bus by the secular people of the world because I won't live with the world's standards that keep changing, constantly changing, depending on who's got the money and who's got the power. It's like relative truth. Whatever somebody thinks is true, that's what's true. No! God gave us absolute truth. He gave us a truth that never changes. And if we will lead our families and our employees with absolute truth, you will gain respect and integrity, and you will show trustworthiness and wisdom. And sometimes we need a little demonstration maybe that helps us understand all this. So I brought this basketball. Maybe some of you have seen this before. But if I put this basketball down on the floor here, and I ask each one of you, one at a time, to come up here and stand on this basketball without moving and without any help, I'd say that the majority of you in here couldn't do that. But if I take this Bible and I put that down on the floor here, and I ask every one of you to come up here and stand on it without moving and without help, I'd say the majority of you would be able to do that. Why? Because it's a firm foundation. It's a standard that never changes. A firm foundation. And that leads me to what you've seen in the ad. There's two essential ingredients we need to lead with power. We need living water, and we need love from the heart. Not just the head, but from the heart. You see, I loved with my head for the first 40 years, and then God taught me how to love with my heart. You see, in Proverbs it says, as water reflects the face, so a man's heart reflects the man. And he also says in the book of Matthew, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. That's who you are, what's ever in here. If there's bitterness and anger and hatred in here, that's what will come out. If there's love and compassion in here, then that's what will come out. You see, God gave my heart a new home. And He moved me out of darkness and into His marvelous light, and I love it. I would not change my life for anything or anybody the way that He's taught me to lead and love now. And now I want to switch a little bit to missions. And I want to tell you a little bit about what happens in a godless nation and how God can change a godless nation. And I'm particularly talking about Eastern Europe, Russia, Ukraine, and there's several other countries there like that. So if who's got the, yeah. So I got a few notes here I have to follow. But this right here is a picture just outside of Red Square. And I'm going to tell you that if you've been to Russia and you've been to Red Square, or you've been up the river cruise to St. Petersburg, you didn't see what I'm going to show you. You've seen 1 or 2% of Russia. Russia's a mess. Russia's so far behind us in living conditions, and I'm not talking about technology or military. I'm talking about living conditions. And so the next slide. This is a spray painter. This is the kind of stuff you see in the cities. I've been in every major city in Russia in 25 trips. And I didn't take these pictures just because they were the worst pictures. What I'm showing you is the normal when you get outside of Moscow. Next picture. Equipment in Russia, and the next one. Equipment, the Cold War, the Russians took all the steel. There wasn't no steel for anybody else. So everything in these cities, they had no steel. So everything's wired together since 1965 or in that area. Everything's, the buses, the equipment, everything is wired together. This is not an exceptional picture.
Keep talking.
And so I just brought these to show you what communism and socialism looks like. There is no holy God in either one. The government is your God. And so, next picture. Most of Russia lives in flats. There's 149 million people, or 150 million people living in Russia. Just think of that. They have no people. In 12 time zones, 150 million people. We have 330 million in 4 time zones. And so 149 million of those 150 million live like this. There are no houses, only for the mafia or the government officials. This is how the Russians live, and they are not pretty. We call them apartments, they call them flats. But all these flats are built out of concrete and wood. There's no steel in any of them. And they're not pretty on the inside. And so go to the next picture. These are newer flats, and they are nicer. There's no question about it. But they're still flats. There's no houses. And most of these Russians have lived for 3 generations in a 3-room flat. There's grandpa and grandma, mom and dad, and the kids. No privacy. And if you were a good worker at one of their factories, then you got on a list, and it'd probably take you 10 years to get your own flat. But you did get on a list if you had a job at the right place. So this is how they live in Russia. And dealing with the population, women are like almost 2 to 1 in Russia. Why? Well, because Lenin and Stalin and Khrushchev and Brezhnev killed all their people. They were killed in war, or they just blew them away because somebody reported that they weren't towing the line with communism. Killed millions of people. And then alcohol killed the rest. Alcohol is out of control in Russia. Absolutely out of control. When I get up in the morning and I'm walking at 5 o'clock in the morning and the sun's up at 3 in some of these Arctic Circle or other Siberia where I am, that's the whole that's all they have to do. See, Russians don't have toys. They don't have swimming pools and big stadiums and boats and motors and motorcycles. There's nothing for them to do, so they have a 100-acre park in the middle of the city, and that's where they go. And they drink, and they visit, and then they go home, go to bed. And when I'm walking them parks in the morning, it's like somebody set off a bomb. There's teenagers laying everywhere, drunk, passed out. Why? Because they sell the alcohol on the streets. All the alcohol is on the streets. So the older ones hand it to the 10-year and 12-year-old ones, and that's what you get. And so they're also, right now, Russia is paying women to have a baby. They pay 10,000 rubles because they know they're so short of people. Well, 10,000 rubles is about $150. The exchange rate 65 to 1 right now. And it's like nothing. And so they got all these social problems and all these living condition problems. And so anyway, next film. This really will break your heart. Orphanages. Thousands of orphanages in Russia. Thousands of orphanages. There's 53 orphanages just in Volgograd, where I pass through quite often. 53 orphanages. And these children, when I'm there, they don't want to let go of you. They just cling to you. There's no one to love them. And they want to go home. They want to have a family. They want to be loved. It breaks my heart. And the most evil thing Russia ever did was shut off Americans adopting Russian kids. It's the most evil thing. And this is normal. I mean, they're everywhere. Next picture. This is, like I said, in the 90s there were no grocery stores. This is where you bought your groceries, out on the street. This is in Siberia. It was 45 below when I took that picture. And this is where they bought their groceries. Now they're starting to bring more and more groceries stores in line. And but right along the side of these are all the alcohol stands and the cigarette stands and all that stuff. And so it's just a whole different life that those people. I feel so sorry for them. As a matter of fact, just to back up a minute, because I'm going to talk about the schools. The Lord showed me a way to serve with the International School Project. And International School Project is a division of Campus Crusade for Christ. Campus Crusade for Christ has a lot of divisions, medical and prison and everything else. Well, the International School Project that I serve with, we take a curriculum to these foreign countries that's in their language, and it's called Christian Ethics and Morality, a Moral Person as an Asset to Society. And we train the teachers how to teach this curriculum to the kids. And in 1995, the International School Project called me up, and I don't even know how I got connected with them, but they called me up and they said, hey, we're having a conference and we're a little short of help. Could you help us out? I said, where's the conference? And they said, in Omsk, Siberia, in January. I thought, you got to be kidding me. I hate the Russians and I hate cold weather. I said, I'll have to call you. Well, the Holy Spirit was nudging me. He said, you need to go. So I went. And I fell in love with the Russian people. And Who would have guessed that almost 30 years, almost to the month, that I flew out of Saigon, that the Lord would lead me to a people group that I hated to deliver His message. That gives me goosebumps. It really does. And so I fell in love with the Russian people, and that's why I keep going back. I've done 25 trips there now, and the reason I backed up to tell you that is because I want to tell you about the schools a little bit. Go to the next picture. This is a sanitarium where we stayed, but this is where we stay when we have a conference, and we have a conference in one city one week and one in another city the next week. We have 600 teachers one week and 600 the next, and we all get teachers that in our group. We might have 8, 10, 12 teachers for the week that we get assigned, and this is where our team stays. There might be 10 of us, there might be 40 of us. But this sanitarium is where Russia sent their people once a year for a 3-day break. That's the only rest and relaxation they got, is in here. They got 3 meals, and they got a shower, and they got all that. What I didn't tell you yet is that all these flats, a lot of them have just a sink. There's no bathroom, there's no shower. The bathroom is on the same floor where 75 people use it, and no one cleans it. Okay? One bathroom for the entire floor, each floor. And so the reason I'm telling you this is because these living conditions, and nobody in America would put up with this. And so they go here, there's a sauna in there, and that's their R&R for the year, 3 days. Actually, I got so many things going through my head on all this that I was invited to my interpreters. We all get interpreters, of course, to put on this conference. I was invited to my interpreter's place, and 2 different times, one in one city, one in another. One city, my interpreter had a 10 by 10 room. That's like this right here. A 10 by 10 room. She had a mattress on the floor, a table, 2 chairs, a sink in the corner, and a hot plate to warm their food. That was their life. And that was one flat right after another. And I was in another interpreter's home whose parents, father was a neurosurgeon, mother was a pediatric doctor. And I thought, I just got to ask this question. And so I said to them, they put on a nice meal for me, and I said, why would you go to school your whole life to be a brain surgeon for $5 a day? Because, see, everybody got paid the same. The guy that swept the warehouse floor and the brain surgeon got the same money. That's the way it is in communism and socialism. And you know what their answer was? For Mother Russia. For Mother Russia. That was their answer. You get communism drilled into your head so much in those 70 years of communism, and that's why when we leave here, we go to a palace. And a palace is where the kids went after school to get communism drilled into their head. Those palaces are all empty now, and we're teaching the Bible in those palaces. Hallelujah. You bet. So, next picture. These are your famous Russian squat pots. These are your bathrooms. That's what you'll find in most public buildings. The only place you'll find commodes is in a newer hotels or in a newer government buildings. This is a very fancy bathroom. Go to the next. These squat pots are what you'll find in most places like schools. Schools, listen to this. these schools have squat pots lined up, like maybe a dozen or 15 in a row. And they're in the women's and they're in the men's. And these are not old schools. This school was 5 years old. Now, how would you like your kids to go to school, or you, or your wife, and this is what you use: put one foot in each pad and do your job. Those are the living conditions, and I have never been in a school that had anything. Either they didn't have no running water at all. 1,500 kids in a school with no running water. They went down the road a couple hundred feet to a building that had the bathroom in it, that had these in it. Nothing in the schools. So, I mean, no privacy, no nothing. I mean, it's just crazy. I think that's all. Is that all the? Yeah. So, anyway, there's one, like, I've been in hundreds of Russian schools. One computer per school or one computer per grade. And all the grades are always together. There's the kindergarten through high school are in the same building. And the schools are all concrete and wood, and they're not nice to look at. The teachers, they do what they can to dress up the school by bringing flowers, and they have lined the halls with flowers. A lot of these schools, there's tin on the floor like I have in my pole shed. They just nail tin on the floor. And that's how they fix stuff. There's no gyms in most schools. There's no pools. There's none of that stuff. No weight rooms. And anyway, I'm telling you this because the living conditions in Russia, I feel so sorry for these people. And I think I covered most everything. The Minister of Health said 3 years ago that 36,000 Russians would die that year from drinking home cleaning fluids with alcohol in it because they couldn't afford the vodka. When I'm at the airport and I'm getting ready to board a Russian plane, or I'm on a Russian plane, it just reeks of alcohol. Just reeks of alcohol. It's out of control. And so I think I pretty well covered most of this. Until the year 2000, you couldn't find a restaurant in any city. 2 million people, no restaurants. None, zero. Now you're starting to see McDonald's pop up in some of the major ones. So anyway, I want to switch. I don't have a lot of time left here, so I got to switch to tell you that what God can do to change a godless society. You see, through the International School Project, we've trained 85,000 Russian teachers in this curriculum. We put the Bible in 100,000 Russian schools. And who knows how many million children have been touched and taught some morals and some character development. It's just simply amazing what God is doing. And we have to be invited there. Sometimes the right hand don't know what the left hand's doing. We land in Siberia, and that's 10, 12 hours of flying out of Moscow, and you're still only halfway across Siberia. And we land, and the officials will meet you at the door, at the ramp of the plane, say, just keep going. You're not doing anything here. When we've been invited by that same city's officials. So you adjust. Everything changes. But anyhow, I want to tell you a little bit about a couple quick stories. Ludmila? Yeah, okay. Ludmila is a teacher that I work with in Volgograd, Russia. Is that working? Yeah. Ludmila, Volgograd is the old Stalingrad where the Russians beat the Germans. And the whole city's nothing but history of World War II.
Just talk straight into it like that.
Oh, okay. And so anyway, Ludmila came to a conference we held in Sochi, Russia, and she's from Volgograd. And when she got there, after the week-long conference and talking about this curriculum and everything, she decided that she wanted to give her life to Christ. And so she understood the need for the Bible. She went back to Volgograd and she started a Christian Teachers Association. And this Christian Teachers Association has took off like this. She went on her own to several schools and convinced them of the need for moral education and character development. She's just a wonderful lady. And right now, she's the leader of the International School Project for all of southern Russia. She's excellent English. I communicate with her every other week on Skype. I send Bible studies. Every time I get through Volgograd, I stop, and she has a conference arranged, and we do our conference thing, and great woman. When we have these conferences, there's a lot of hearts touched besides just the teachers who come. There's other government officials, there's principals, there's KGB agents. You see, the KGB agent may be sent there to peek through the back door and spy on us and report back to the authorities what we're doing. And lo and behold, after they listen to the message, God's message for a week, some of them have given their life to Christ. Amazing what God can do. Actually, the current man I work with right now in the Ukraine, he's in charge of the International School Project for the whole country. He was a KGB agent just on the eastern side of the Berlin Wall. And because he knew English, he was assigned to report on conversations that the intercepting American military conversations over the years. He came to one of these conferences and he gave his life to Christ. And now he's in charge of the whole country. Last April and June, I was in the Ukraine. I'm going to tell you another thing that just gives me goosebumps. He took me and introduced me to the second person in authority under the Minister of Education. He says, we need to talk to her about this curriculum and ISP. So he took me there, and she gave me, the most precious gift she could give me, 35 minutes of her time. This woman was, she was just busy. And she sat down and she listened, and I told her about the International School Project and the need for moral education in the schools. And she looked at me and she said, you are right. She said, I will send you a letter of invitation, and you are welcome in every school in my district, which is over 800 schools. Just think of that. Me, a country boy, and I have access now to all the schools in her area. That's a God thing. There's no other way you can explain this. And so in finishing up, I want to, this is going to be difficult holding this. And in finishing up, I want to tell you a little bit about life maps. Life maps are something that we do with these teachers to get to know one another. These teachers come to this conference and they don't know one another. And we have 8, 10, or 12 in my group. They don't know one another before they got there. So we have them draw life maps. A life map is the story of your life from the time you were born until now. You see, I drew my life map like a river. And the smooth parts of the river is the good things in my life. Where there's rocks and rapids, those are the difficult times in my life. And so we tell the teachers, draw however you want, and they have a great imagination. Some draw a life map like a tree, with half the tree's got fruit on it and half of it's dead. Some draw a life map like a railroad track, and there's breaks in the railroad track. We don't care. But when they're done drawing their life maps, they share their life maps with one another. And they learn about each other's life. And what I'm trying to tell you men, that if you're the owner of a business, or you're a manager, or you're the CEO, you want to get to know the person you're working with. What a beautiful tool this is to do that. And don't tell me that you can't do it because of the Privacy Act, because you're not doing it with a new employee. You do it with somebody that's working with you, somebody you want to get to know. You don't know whether that person's lost a child, committed suicide when they were a young age, or died in an auto accident, their 2-year-old daughter. You don't know if that person you're working with is a Christ follower, and he don't like the language that you're using. But he don't want to tell you because you're the boss. I'm telling you, this is a wonderful tool to get to know one another. And I want to read you what one lady in Cynthia down in Honduras, one of the ladies in my group. I want to read you what she said. She says, "I came here with an empty heart, but because of what I learned through you and this conference, I'm taking Jesus home with me with hope and love in my heart." You see, the rest of the story is that her husband, her 2 brothers, and her dad were all shot dead at the same time over an argument over trees on a boundary line. This woman was hurting, and she broke down and cried when she was given this message. And all those other teachers came around her and held her and comforted her. And see, that's what life is all about. And it's a beautiful thing. And that's what these things, that's what these life maps are for. You see, exercise can build the body, and courses of study can train the mind, but only Jesus Christ can change the heart. You know, along with that, America needs a heart transplant. Do we all agree? America's a mess. And it reminds me of the story of the pilot flying along at 28,000 feet. He comes on the mic and he says, "I got some good news and I got some bad news." He says, "The bad news is we're lost. But the good news is we're making good time." You see, I think that fits America perfect. We're lost, but we're making good time. America is in desperate need of men, real men like you guys. Men that can make a difference in other people's lives. We have a desperate need for that. And I guarantee, and you know, actually, I should say it, you men in here, a lot of you guys are young. You're young, you're smart, you're healthy, and you got all kinds of tools available to you. But the one tool that you need more than anything is living water. And I guarantee you that if you'll drink this living water, not only will you never thirst again, but you'll be able to lead with gentleness, with love, and with His power. And remember, when your heart beats for the last time, we win. God bless you, and thank you for listening.